Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. The entire nation is celebrating the 147th birth anniversary of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. People from all walks of life have been paying rich tributes to the father of the nation and founder of Pakistan. The day dawned with gun salutes at the federal capital as well as the provincial capitals to pay homage to the father of the nation, and a graceful change of guard ceremony at the mausoleum of the Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah was also held. On this very special day, the top leadership have highlighted the importance of following Quaid's ideals and vision for greater progress and prosperity. President Dr. Arif Alvi in his message has stressed upon unity, hope and justice for the promotion of Islamic ideal, moral values, unity and brotherhood. Likewise, caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haq Kakar in his message has said, let me quote him, Quaid's principles of unity, faith and discipline should be the guiding principles for all as a nation to realize the democratic state as conceived by its founder, unquote. Chief of Army Staff General Sayyid Asim Munir, while paying rich tributes to Quaid, has quoted his speech on 11th of August 1947 to the Constituent Assembly, saying, let me quote him, you are free to go to your temples, you are free to go to your mosques or to any other place of worship in this state of Pakistan, unquote. Likewise, the Information Minister Murtaza Solanki has said Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah was an intelligent lawyer and firmly believed in the rule of law. Also, all parties Hurriyat Conference leadership have also paid glowing tributes to Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, saying Quaid-e-Azam used to call Kashmir a jugular vein and an economic backbone of Pakistan. In today's program, we are going to talk with our esteemed panel of guests about Quaid's ideals and vision. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Fida Bazai. He happens to be a political and security analyst, and he has done his MS and PhD in international politics from University of Glasgow, Scotland. And thank you very much for your time, Dr. Bazai, for being with us on today's episode. We really appreciate that.
Thank you, Jawad, for having me.
Also, at the same time, we are honored to have been joined on Skype by Lieutenant General retired Raza Muhammad Khan. He's former president of National Defense University. General Khan, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin with you, Dr. Bazai. Now, when it comes to those core ideals and those principles which were associated with Quaid's personality himself, what were those? Would you like to shed a bit of light that actually infused the spirit in Pakistan movement at that time?
I mean, Pakistan movement has been known for its rule of law. The first thing, that it is one of the few countries where we got independence without firing a single shoot. It means that the first thing was the rule of law. He was the big follower of rule of law. So it is one of the first thing. Second thing was, what is the most important thing in this context, his Quaid understanding of the international politics and the situation at that time, that he understood politics and international system so deeply at that time, and he came up with such intelligent strategies and such intelligent policies that enabled us today to have an independent, separate, sovereign country, which is one of the biggest gift for a nation state.
Right. Let me bring in General Khan into the discussion also. General Khan, what do you think what those core ideals or the traits associated specifically with the personality of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah that actually infused that very spirit and kept that Pakistan movement going until the realization of its actual goal and ensured that the Muslims of subcontinent got a separate homeland to live in?
Okay, Bismillah Rahman Rahim. I think in this connection, I'd like to quote briefly from two of the most important biographers of the father of the nation. And the first one is really a very apt and all-inclusive compliment paid to the Quaid in 1984 by the American author and historian Stanley Wolper in his book titled Jinnah of Pakistan. And I quote, few individuals alter the course of history, fewer still modify the map of the world. Hardly anyone can be credited with creating a nation state. Jinnah did all three by his indomitable will. So the emphasis laid was by his indomitable will. The second biographer is Hector Bolito. He observed in his book, Jinnah, Creator of Pakistan. He wrote this book in 1954. And he quotes 4 months before the partition, the Quaid was 70 years old and very sick. Nehru was 57 years and Mountbatten was 46 years old. But the Quaid's single mindedness and persistent integrity still sustained him, so that in the end he was able to enjoy considerable victory over his adversaries, both British and Hindus. And I would add to that that even at the time, there were some Muslims who had different ideas, and some of them even opposed him. But in the end, they were also convinced that India needs to be divided and Pakistan needs to be created. The same author says that Jinnah believed that democracy was in the blood of the Muslims. And he used to quote to him that the biggest example of that is that when he goes to the mosque and he prays, then his driver stands by him, stands along with him, which is the biggest example of Muslims unity. So I think these were some of the practical examples of the Qaid's character, because of which the independence movement succeeded. And I think for this very reason, we are all remembering him today and we are grateful to him for the creation of Pakistan.
Right. General Khan, you very pertinently highlighted the core traits as elaborated by the historians in the books regarding Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and it includes indomitable determination that you mentioned, the single-mindedness and the personal integrity. How important these three particular traits are for any leader to actually spearhead a movement, such a gigantic movement, such as Pakistan movement was?
Well, I think he led by example, and I think not only were the Muslims following him because of that, but even people who opposed him, they had recognized this, and most of them would say that he could be bought by no one and for no price. And he was so steadfast, an idealist and a man of scrupulous honor. These were, some of the remarks passed by the then Chief Justice of India. Similarly, when Nelson Mandela visited Pakistan in 1992, he insisted that a visit to the Qaid's mausoleum must be arranged for him, because I quote again, he said that he was a constant source of inspiration for all those who are fighting against discriminations. So I think these are some of the major lessons for the people of Pakistan to learn. And I think if that is done, I am sure the Qaid's dream of a prosperous and a very stable Pakistan will come true.
Right. Dr. Bazai, now talking about the constant source of inspiration as mentioned by General Khan, who quoted Nelson Mandela saying about the great Quaid, and the kind of characteristics he has already mentioned through different references on the biography of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the indomitable determination, single-mindedness, and the personal integrity. When it comes to these traits, how relevant these traits had been throughout history, and how relevant these traits are today for leaders to spearhead the movement with the true spirit?
I mean, what we know from Pakistan affair history, one of the single character with which Pakistan movement is closely and strongly associated, it is the character of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. So he single-handedly taken this entire movement and taken it to the end successfully. So that skill of leadership is or was not only essential at that time, that is always necessary for a country, and especially for a country as big as Pakistan, in a situation, in a condition located in South Asia. So definitely single-handedly that intelligence leadership is extremely important, whether it was at that time, at the time of independence, or it is today where we are today.
Right, let's talk about that very fundamental principle that is being given by the great Quaid of unity, faith, and discipline. Now, let's separately talk about each one of them. What dividends do you think unity brings in when it comes to a movement such as Pakistan movement, and later on, subsequently, when we talk about the process of nation building?
I mean, unity is one of the core principles, because if nations are, definitely there are different lines of divisions among, in every nation. People are divided on ethnic basis, on political basis, on sectarian and ideological basis. So one of the core principles for any nation to achieve any goal, whether that is political, military, and economic, it is unity. Unity is such an important principle that there is no concept of a nation without unity. So unity is closely associated with the concept of nationhood itself. There is no concept or no understanding of a nation without unity. So unity is coming that core principle. Therefore, it should be understood in that context that it is extremely essential. If you take out unity from any country, then that is not a nation. That will be, there will be anarchy, and it will be just a dispersed group of people. So unity is basically converting people into a nation. It is that important for
Right, General Khan, your understanding about this very core and fundamental principle given by the great Quaid, specifically talking about unity, and has also been referenced today in his message on this special day by caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haq Kakar, to realize the true function of democracy and achieving and realizing that goal of having the democratic state. Please go ahead.
So once again, I'd like to quote from what the Quaid said himself. And he says, our constitution should be democratic, embodying the essential principles of Islam. Our decisions in state affairs shall be guided by consultations as taught by the Almighty. And I think all these things were later on enshrined in the Constitution of Pakistan, particularly in the objective resolutions. In addition to that, I think we talked of unity, and I think about discipline. I'd again like to quote what he said about that. And he said, I quote, that freedom does not mean that you can behave as you please, irrespective of the right of others. The quotation that I have no doubt that with unity, faith, and discipline, we will compare with any nation of the world followed. The first part that I just quoted to him. Then again, he said, that do not criticize others unless you yourself have learned to respect the sanctity of law. Another important, direction and lesson that he gave to the nation was about honesty in public life. And he says that this is more important than private life because the former or could affect millions while the latter usually affects a few. And now, as the elections are due, in the country in February the 8th, so in that, I'd like to quote, and he said, I prefer defeat to winning elections by dishonest and corrupt practices. So again, I think he has laid out, a number of guidelines for us. Unfortunately, he did not author a book himself, but I think his quotations and his directions have been gathered and very well catalogued by Pakistani as well as foreign writers. And I think there is a need to teach them, to make, to create the awareness about what he wanted and what he desired. And I think this needs to be done at all levels in the country, started, from school education to the college education, and later on, even, in higher education like PhD and in masters and PhD programs.
Indeed, there happens to be great depth and wisdom in the sayings of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, which had been serving and which will continue to serve as a great beacon of light for generations to come. Dr. Bazai, the democratic principles, as referenced today also by caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haq Kakar, to realize the true functioning of a democratic state, what was Quaid's vision regarding that, as per your understanding?
I mean, first commenting on the principle of democracy, let me say something on the three basic principles of unity, faith and discipline in the context of freedom movement. I mean, what was the biggest success of Quaid at that time was that the moment which got independence was a united movement. So that was the first thing he did. He demonstrated to the nation that how to bring unity in a nation. Second was they had faith in him, that therefore the entire nation stood behind him for this moment. So the third was, it was such a disciplined moment that independence was got without using the source of violence. So if one want to understand the three basic principles of unity, faith and discipline, then one must study and see his character during the freedom movement. That is one thing. Democratization. Democracy is of course essential. Democracy is it is now extremely important for all modern nation states to give the right to its people to elect its own government. So the days of dictatorships have passed away, and Quaid was himself a big believer of democratic principles and democracy. He believed in. He has said this thing several times in his speeches that democracy is essential. Democracy, but what I personally understand are there is one reference that I must quote here. That is Francis Fukuyama. He has written in his book, which is extremely essential on democracy. It says that democracy is essential, but what is more important is the sequence of democracy, that where you are bringing democracy. So it is not just democracy for the sake of democracy. Democracy should be understood in the greater context. Democracy should be brought for the betterment of people. Democracy should be brought for enlightenment. democracy should be brought for transparency. But if it is only democracy for the sake of democracy, then it does not have that much importance. What is important in today's context as well, that democracy must have a broader implication than just election.
Right. General Khan, now when we talk about the second part of this principle, faith, what sort of importance it had at that particular time when Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah emphasized on faith when Muslims of the subcontinent were struggling against subjugation and discrimination?
Well, I think faith, I think in my view, had a number of connotations. So he included that as a motto for the people of Pakistan. And the first component is faith in the cause for which the Pakistan movement was launched. And I think that was an important component. And then faith, again, as we understand, is our faith that Muslims are a nation which cannot live with, at that time, which could not live together with the Hindus. And that is the rationale, that he gave to Lord Mountbatten and others. And he very clearly stated that they have different ways of living their lives. They had different beliefs, and that there was nothing common in them. And therefore, it was important that the subcontinent is partitioned. And by way of that, he gave them many examples. And he says that, the Hindus are not prepared to eat or to drink with the Muslims. They are not prepared, to live in areas where Muslims are living. And we are now seeing clear manifestations of this in the present day India. And similarly, I think he talked about what, how different their living and their eating habits are. And he gave the example of how a cow or animal slaughter is treated by Hindus and how it is treated by Muslims. So I think it included all those aspects, and that is why it was included in the manifesto and I think in the motto for Pakistan.
Right, Dr. Bazai, as mentioned by General Khan. Now, the very ideals that separate the two entities of the subcontinent, that separated them at that particular point in time, the Hindus and the Muslims, the way of lives both had on different planes. Now, General Khan has also mentioned the kind of situation with the minorities over there in present day India. It was because of the vision and the far-sightedness of the great Quaid that he saw the things at that particular time in history, and that is what exactly has been happening to the minorities, especially to the Muslims in India over the course of years.
I mean, again, I want to comment here on the element of faith as well. That what Quaid basically mean about faith, that Pakistan as a nation must be identified with the faith, that it is a faithful nation. It should have become part of our identity. This Muslim faith, he wanted it, Pakistan, to wear this thing with grace and accept it very proudly that it is a faithful nation. So one should not be very apologetic over this issue. Second, farsightedness, that is, there is no doubt over this thing that Quaid did not only have very good understanding of the politics, but he also had very farsightedness over the issue of minority. He was sure that if Muslim did not get independence at that moment of time, at that very moment of time, it would not have been possible later on. And if Muslim had not got their independent country, then there would have been at the disposal of Hindu majority in India, which could have twisted into any direction. As we can see today, that the condition is not ideal, and what has been happening, especially with Muslim minorities, where they have always been scrutinized and securitized, and Muslim cannot that independently practice their faith, and they are very conscious about their identity. This thing would have been with the entire Muslim population in South Asia if there was not an independent Muslim state with the name of Pakistan.
Right, as you already mentioned about minorities. Now, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, while segregating the very true identity between the Muslims of the subcontinent, well as the kind of ideas at that time the Hindus had, and we've seen the kind of discrimination that is being meted out to minorities, especially the Muslim minorities within India now. Now, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah set a precedent also when it came to the treatment of minorities in a new country, Pakistan, where the minorities are going to be treated very differently on very different dimensions as compared to what sort of treatment minorities were getting in India and till date they are getting.
No doubt. Like, one thing about Pakistan is, in Pakistan, minorities have never been associated with security threat. There might have been some individual incident with them, but there is not a pattern of injustice with minorities. What is more important is pattern, not single incident. Single incident happens with anybody, any country, any nation. So in Pakistan, what we cannot see, that there is not a pattern in policies. It is not at least state policy that there is discrimination against any minorities. On the other hand, when we look at India, unfortunately, we can see many examples where Muslims are very closely associated with national security threat, and the biggest example is Kashmir, what has been happening in Kashmir. So on this particular case, we are two different case studies, and Pakistan is ranked much higher than India when it comes to treatment of minorities.
Right, General Khan, now Quaid, of course, setting a different precedent when it came to the treatment and the rights of the minorities in a new nation state that was achieved after a prolonged struggle. How do you think, what was the vision when it came to particularly dealing with the minorities in the new country, Pakistan, and their rights as well as ensured in the constitution as well?
Well, I think the Quaid's directions and vision about the minorities, which decided not to go to India, was very clear. And I think he had directed the then Prime Minister, Mr. Liaquat Ali Khan, and he had the civil servants there. They were all directed to treat all the minorities, particularly the Hindus and the Sikhs, and of course the Christians, the Parsis, with the utmost dignity. And he had very clearly stated that they were free, to practice their own religion in whatever way they deemed it appropriate. And I think that was greatly appreciated at that time. But I'd like to, point out at two or three other very important aspects. And one is about the kind of politics that he believed in. And he said that he told the Indian politicians, which included Mr. Nehru and Gandhi, that you try to find out what will please the people and you then act accordingly. But my way of action is quite different. I first decide what is right and I do it, and the people come around me and the opposition vanishes. So that was, a totally different kind of politics that he did. And I think there is a lesson for us also here. Secondly, about law and order, I think he said that, I quote, I wish to express that every attempt on the part of my countrymen to undermine the authority of the government, and here I am referring, to the terrorists who do this, to undermine the authority of the government. And then he continued, and to disturb law and order deserves the strongest condemnation and the highest punishment. And that such intentions, he said, were the biggest enemies of the country and the people. I think he said that, you all have to be law abiding citizens. And then he added that I believe in criticizing the government freely and frankly, but at the same time, it is the duty of every educated man to support and help the government when the government is right. And I think he was pointing out, this was after the partition, at the media. And I think that is the lesson which he wanted the media to follow. And about education, I think he gave the highest priority to education. And he said, uh, on the matter of education and the budget for the country, I say find the money. If necessary, tax the people. But I shall be told that the people are already taxed. I shall be told that we shall be facing great unpopularity. But then he added that it is the duty of every civilized government to educate their masses. And if we have to face unpopularity, if we have to face a certain amount of danger, face it boldly in the name of duty. So he knew how important, education was for the people of Pakistan, the newly created nation. And he also knew that before the partitions, how difficult it was for the Muslims because they did not give that much importance to the secular education. Of course, there was great emphasis, on the religious education. But I think he wanted to emphasize all other forms of education also.
Right, Dr. Bazai. Now, as General Khan has mentioned, the importance of education has been highlighted by Quaid's quotes. Now, educating the masses when it comes to building a new nation, getting its goal achieved, getting that country separated, getting that very territory for itself to practice what it wants, what it had been actually aspiring for, to build that particular ideal and to get the dream of practicing all what they wanted according to the ideas they had set. How important was to educate the masses right from the start?
I mean, nobody can debate the importance of education. Education is extremely and profoundly important, especially in creating characters. What is not needed in a country like Pakistan, we don't need a large number of graduates just with degrees. What we need is a large number of graduates with I characters, I values, and I skills. So that is how our education system must be focused on. It should now turn from number to quality, from number to skill, from number to values. We must inculcate such a values in our nation that should differentiate us from other nation and take us to the rank of civilized nation. And one of the key tool for achieving this objective is quality education, value oriented education, skill equipped education. So that is what should be the top priority of our education.
So what is required when it comes to the educational institutions currently working here in Pakistan? What's required, as you mentioned about what is required is that quality education, the skilled education, with the changing times, with the technological advancement happening with so much pace every single day. What do you think the educational institutions, keeping in light those ideals set by Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah when it comes to equipping the youth in particular with the quality education, innovation, and also in line with the modern times as well?
Like for that, as I've already said, that what we need is we should move away now from conventional approach to education, where we go by the set curriculum. No, now the time is asking for a different set of curriculum, a different set of values, and a different model of teachings. So in this modern period, now people or industries are no more asking you for degrees. They just ask you what are the skill, what are the work that you can bring, what are the quality that you can bring to any organization. So our education system must be market oriented and value based. Values for character building and market orientation mean it should have demand. When our graduates are graduating, there should no more be the question of unemployment in a country. Their degrees should enable them to create employment either within a country or abroad. That is what should be the objective.
Right, General Khan, when you talk about, as General Bazai has mentioned very important points, that we should actually move away from the conventional education. It should be the new methods should include the market-oriented education, the value-based. Would you like to shed a bit of light on these two aspects of it?
Absolutely, I think I agree with what he has said. And I think these are some of the aspects, unfortunately, which are not emphasized as much, in our schools and our colleges. And I think we don't want to produce, just people who are looking for a job after the education, but we should be actually creating good citizens. And good citizens are those, who have good characters, and they are those who would always put, the interest of the country, the interest of the community, and the interest of the society uh, above their own petty or personal interests. So those are the aspects I think they need to be taught. Again, one other aspect that he has always emphasized was that he used to say that we have won, the battle for Pakistan's freedom, but the grimmer war of its preservation and building Pakistan on a sounder foundation has to be fought to a successful conclusion. So this is ongoing, the preservation of Pakistan is ongoing, and we know that we are facing external and internal challenges. Sometimes these are existential challenges, and unless the people of Pakistan unite, and unless they remember what the Quaid had actually uh, warned about immediately after the partition, I think we can be those dangers will then continue to persist. So that is again a very important lesson. He has always been advising the people pre-partition and after the partition to put the national interest, the Muslims, or the interest of the Muslims as a community above the political interest. He has always been emphasizing payment of taxes by everyone. We are aware that as a Governor General in Karachi, where he was living, uh, he used to get only rupee one as a salary, and when the guests used to come, he would insist. He would tell his military secretary that if somebody has to come and have tea or coffee or refreshments, he expects them, to have them at their houses, at their homes, and that if tea or refreshment was served during official meetings, then everybody was supposed to make payment for that. So these are some of the examples, I think, that he has left for all of us to emulate. particularly during, our official handling or, the handlings at the level of the government, even otherwise,
Right.
in the corporate sector, he is given this personal example, which is very much, worth emulating.
Right, Janak Khan, of course, there's lots to talk about when it comes to Quaid's character, Quaid's ideals and vision. Unfortunately, we are short of time. Last quick remarks as to what was the importance when it comes to Kashmir for Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah and his vision regarding it.
Is this question for me?
Yes, General Khan, please go
Yes.
ahead.
Yes, I think, at the time of partition, I only narrate, the instance when the Indian army landed its troops in soon after the partition to occupy Kashmir, and through that fake instrument of surrender. So the guy had asked the then commander in chief of the Pakistan army, he was a British general, Sir Douglas D. Gracey, to take action against the intruders, who unfortunately replied to the Qaid that he first has to obtain permission from the British government, the Crown. So I think the Qaid was very unhappy at that, and I think he at that time had declared that the people of Kashmir
Right.
have their right to self-determination,
Right.
and unless that right is given to them, uh, peace and tranquility in the subcontinent will continue to be threatened, and you see that is still
Right.
happening.
Right, General Khan, your point is well taken. Your last quick comments, Dr. Bazai, as to when Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah termed Kashmir as a jugular vein of Pakistan.
I mean, the principle on which United India was separated or divided, that was religious majority and territorial contiguity. Both of those principles were violated when it comes to the issue of Kashmir. So the issue of Kashmir was not only an issue of people, territory, but also of principle, that it did not match with the basic principle on which the United India was divided. So by that principle, Kashmir should have been part of Pakistan.
Your point is well taken. Dr. Fida Bazai, political and security analyst, joining us in the studio. Thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. On Skype, we were honored to have been joined by Lieutenant General retired Raza Khan, former president of the National Defence University. General Raza Khan, thank you very much for your time also once again for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Thank you very much for watching.